Okay, I thought it came back on or something like that.
Yeah, it does. I don't know when it comes on, but it comes on.
I gotta figure out how to do that live stream on Facebook. I don't think I've ever done that with Zoom before.
Okay, well, if you go on Facebook and you go under Showtime TV Productions Incorporated, you can share it. Well, here we are. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Showtime TV. I'm your host, Omar Rashada. I'd like to wish everybody a happy Juneteenth celebration of the freedom of the slaves after 1865. And we got tonight's topic of discussion is being an entrepreneur. And I have some very well distinguished guests. I have Lamar Nathaniel Brown. I have Jason Rodriguez and Mrs. Nikichi Ali. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you for being a guest on tonight's program.
Man, thanks for having us, bro.
Thanks for having me as well.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
what I want to do, I want everybody, you're welcome. So what I want to do is have everybody just introduce themselves and just talk about, just give a brief summary of what your business is about and how long you've been involved with your business. So we're gonna do ladies first. Jason, Lamar, you don't mind? Do y'all
Nah, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Ladies first.
Go ahead, Sister Ali, you up.
Absolutely. If you've never heard of me, my name is Nkichi Ali, and I am a designer. I design clothing. I design, whatever you need digitally produced. I do that from websites to business cards to T-shirts to tracksuits and much more. So that in a nutshell is what I do.
Okay, and how long you been doing it?
I have been doing this since 2013. So, I started off slow, but now, things are progressing quickly and I really love what I do.
Excellent. All right, Jason, you up.
Yes, sir. First, thank you for allowing us on your platform. My name is Jason Rodriguez, the owner of Prominent Insurance Services located in Wilmington, Delaware, and Philadelphia as well. We are property and casualty insurance agency. We do personal lines and business, auto, home, business, and life. And we're just franchising this year. We're trying to increase, our goal is to increase minority participation in the insurance space. So we have a franchise opportunities. We have initiative, path to partnerships, and we're looking to, get more of our people into this industry.
All right,
and I got into the business 2010.
Okay, so that's
13 years. 13 years, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a decade plus 3. Okay, Lamar, you up.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Nate, or AKA Lamar Brown, it's my middle name, Lamar. CEO of Dominance Financial. I'm also in the insurance space, more on the side of life insurance. And our business is really geared towards generational wealth creation. So we want people to truly be able to become, at some point in their lifetime in a dominant position financially where they don't have to, panic every 2 weeks and hope it's enough to cover. We want to show them ways that they can safely grow their money, invest their money, use the tax laws and loops in their favor. We want to create generational wealth, and life insurance is one big way to do that. So many financial strategies, from paying off houses and 30-year mortgages in 10 years or less to, children going to college, creating trust fund babies, life insurance, and so many different things. So I could go deep diving, but I'm gonna keep it general for right now.
All right, so more, I want to stay with you. At what point did you just say to yourself, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to work for myself?
Ooh, now I've always had some kind of entrepreneurial sense as a kid. I mean, me and my friend just selling hot dogs and burgers on the corner, grilling and serving them to people back when we were like 10, 11 years old. It's always been in me. But I would have to say I was dabbling in the life insurance space and, creating your own business and income, but I was still working my 9 to 5 within the same mental health social worker field. And then I got my annual bonus once I got my annual bonus of my second job here in Chicago. And I looked at that, whatever they call it, to be a raise. And I was like, let me just go ahead and just take a leap of faith and put in my 2 weeks notice right now. And I was done. So when I realized that, somebody else's opinion of me or my credentials or my degrees dictated how much money I make, what schools I send my kids to, what neighborhoods I can live in, and I just didn't see an end in sight. And I was like, okay, hamster wheel has to go. So I just decided to bet on myself, took a leap of faith, and jumped out there, and haven't looked back since. You couldn't pay me to go back to corporate America just because I'm finally, living my passion and helping out families all across the country. And I steer my own boat. I kind of, I don't want it to sound like in a bragging way or anything like that, but it's like when you know your worth, you want to go get what you're worth, you take that leap of faith and really go out there. And it's not all stars and rainbows. It hasn't been. It's a lot of learning, a lot of figuring it out, a lot of mistakes, but steadily improving. And I got to a place where we're able to finally get there, have my daughters in great schools and better neighborhoods and things like that. So I want to encourage other people to do the same. Hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Nietzsche, what
Yeah.
inspired you to want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, I have done many things in I guess you would say entrepreneurial space. I'm much like Lamar when I was doing things when I was very young, just selling candy, to my classmates and, doing a little hustle, getting to feel, know what it feels like to, make money yourself. Really, it became a bonus to doing what I love and creating things. Like I love creating, an artwork, and usually I use clothes as my outlet. So, I started getting offers like, oh, could you make me one of those? Or could you do that for me? Or whatever the case was. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like doing it. So it kind of just, snowballed from there. And I was able to continue with, doing what I love. So it came out of just being able to make money doing what I love from, the comfort of my home. So that's really what, carried me into the entrepreneurial space.
Okay, Jason, what made you want to be an entrepreneur?
That's all I seen around me. I had no other choice. I didn't know a job existed. Watching my brother and them, hustle, they were selling clothing early in New York City, hustling, finding anything to sell on the street. I thought that was just the way, to eat. Unfortunately or fortunately, never had a job. I've been an entrepreneur, support myself, as far as after my mom had started taking care of me, the responsibility was all mine. And I've always been an entrepreneur, like, Sister Ali was saying, multiple different things I dabbled into. We had clothing stores, transportation companies, record labels, but when I got into insurance, I found out like, wow, this is something I wish I would have knew about years ago. So many aspects to the business, besides how it feeds your family, you help other people as well, in event of a claim or to make them whole again. So to answer your question, a long time, since birth, I used to work for free. My brother used to have me working for food. I didn't know at the time, but they they had a free worker. They had a free worker for years. So now they owe me tons of money,
What they was doing is probably booming you up and getting you ready to be an entrepreneur, just do some work experience.
Intern. I was an intern for a long time.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so this next question, I'm gonna start off with Jason, and anyone else want to chime in, they can. Jason, when someone has the mindset that they want to start their own business, what are the beginning steps that he or she should take in starting their own business?
First, do the research, find resources. And, one thing, don't talk yourself out of it, because a lot of us, we have great ideas. We have great ideas, $1 million ideas, man, but we talk ourselves right out of it. And then we see somebody else do it and we're like, wow, I had that. I should have did that. I just say, if you feel passionate about something, look at the market. Is it now you got to figure as a hobby, or you're trying to make a business out of it? If it's going to be a business, then, you got to look at the market. Is it sustainable? What's the market, opportunity? Like for our business, it's a $5 trillion opportunity. So it's a lot of, money to be made. But of course, there's competition as well. So look at the market opportunity, start, reading, trade journals, learning about that space, doing research. And, if you have a job, I always say your job is your number one investor. You go to work, they're investing in you, you're investing in your future. What you do with your money, is up to you. Instead of buying Jordans and things of that nature, you start putting money away, and then you can start to free yourself over time. So, you want to make sure that you have enough money depending on where you at in your life. I don't know if you are an entrepreneur, somebody's giving you money, you get money from the bank, got good credit score. So everybody's situation is different, but you do want to, do a lot of research on the market opportunity, find out, if there's resources, read cherry journals, and just go at it. This is the world of, the economy is so close with all of these smartphones. So, it's an entrepreneurial world right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say, just start where you are. Like he said, I'm sorry if I don't remember, like Jason said, whatever your passion is, if you're passionate about something, whether it's cooking, drawing, walking dogs, whatever it is, make sure you're passionate about that, because it's nothing worse than going after, something just because you see somebody else do it. You got to have a fire inside of you to want to do, to be an entrepreneur. Plus you can only start where you're at. Some people, they go out and they rent an office space and they decorate it all nicely or whatever their niche is, and they ain't made a dime. And it's like, why would you do that before you even got started? Start where you are. If you home and you got to put the work in, learn about what it is that you're trying to paramount on, and go down that avenue cautiously. Don't race into it. Go cautiously with as much information as you can. It's sometimes it's a big challenge when you're starting out, but you got time. So if you're a young entrepreneur and you're somebody who sees other people out there doing it, and you're inspired by their work, know that they took a lot of steps to get there. So definitely take your time, do your research, and know what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I would also just chime in on there. Just whatever your craft is, or your entrepreneurial, business is, know your audience. Like, know your audience. Be crystal clear on who your audience is. Like, take your time and really think that through. Next, I would say, branding yourself. If no one knows your name, you have to put yourself out there. So, branding, go to Fiverr, go to a friend, go to a college student that's in that tech space. See if someone can, find out what your vision is, create a logo surrounding it, something that you like. And lastly, I would say marketing. Start where you can start, but definitely market yourself. You won't sell a t-shirt if no one knows you're out there. You won't sell insurance, a policy, a book, or anything. So, as Jason was saying, hey, your job is your first investor. Start putting aside, a certain percentage of every paycheck, because you want to make sure you have capital to do marketing, whether it's marketing yourself, Facebook ads, the radio, different things. But also what Nkechi said, start where you're at. Start with your Facebook, TikTok following, or wherever you're at. Let people know you're out there and that you are about your business, and that you're bringing quality to the game. Whatever your niche is, bring quality to it, and it'll happen for you.
Two words I often hear the one as a business, and it's called business plan. What is a business plan? What does it look like? How long should it be? What should be included in the business plan for those who are watching and they may have heard the term? I guess we all heard the term business plan, but how do you do a business plan? What's the format? Anybody can answer that question. All three can answer that question.
Okay, I'll jump in first. For one, a business plan is going to change. As you grow and as you face different hurdles and different things. If the state laws change, marketing laws change, your plan, just make sure your plan is flexible. But your plan definitely has to have a foundation. So you have to, think about your brand and what it is or your business, say, hey, what are we standing on? What are the principles? Are we standing on, integrity, or is that our niche? Is creativity, our niche? Is good quality, or is the speed of our response? What are we proud about? And then whatever that is, figure that out, make that happen. And then whatever it's like the area that's lacking, double down on your losses. Like, they say, hey, this part is bad. Let's put a little bit of effort into that. Second thing I would say is schedule. Schedule. If it's not on my schedule, it doesn't happen. It's one thing when you become an entrepreneur, you have this ambiguous kind of time. You're like, what do I do with all this time? Like, you have to structure your time. So you have to make a calendar, put it in part of your business plan. If I'm doing from 9 to 10, I'm going over emails. From 10 to 11, I'm doing calls. I'm from, and time your lunch in, different things like that. So you definitely want to, and next thing is your vision and your goals. Your vision has to be on your business plan.
I'm sorry, the person you were trying.
If your vision is to make your company as a household name, then you have to go out there. If your vision is to help, create the most dopest thing to the hip hop audience, or to the golf people audience, or to the, urban audience, to the, classy audience, whatever it is, make sure it's in your vision. And then, I can go on there for days on that, but it doesn't have to be a certain amount of pages. It could be 1 page, 12 page, 100 pages, but just make sure you get very detailed and clear on what your vision and your goals is, your foundation, and what you want, and your niche. I'm shut up now. I'm saying too much.
That was good. That was great information. Denise, you want to add on to it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything he said. He hit the nail on the head. But business plans definitely change, especially when you're somebody like me, and I have to wear so many different hats. Like, that's the one thing when you're an entrepreneur, you wear, like you said, the marketing hat and the advertising hat and the creator hat and the, then you're the face and the spokesperson, and then you're doing the finance. You're the one person who does it all. So with your business plan, it's kind of changes a little bit, slightly here and there. It's going to tweak from instance to instance. But at like the foundation has to be there with your brand. You know what your brand is, what the message that you're trying to send, the audience that you're trying to reach. And also understand, when your audience changes. Business plan is definitely a major component when you're getting started. And sometimes when you get started, you don't have a business plan. You're just like, okay, I'm just gonna start. And then later on down the line, you figure out, okay, I got, you're very unorganized. So it helps bring organization into what you're trying to accomplish, and helps you continue to take more steps. So having a detailed plan of where you started, where you're going, and where you want to end up ultimately, so what steps to take to get there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I mean, they said it all, but a business plan is very important. And ironically, I didn't do too many of them. I would have a business plan in my head, and then you want to put it on paper. But a business plan definitely, there's 1-page business plan. They simplify business plans now, but a business plan gives you an idea. It lets you know all of the things that we talked about earlier: market size, who's your client, as Lamar alluded to. It gives you more clarity. So it's very important, and we understand plans don't always go as expected, but as long as you continue to visit it, you have an idea of where you're trying to go. So it's great to have a business plan, and it's needed,
Yeah.
especially for banks,
Oh, yeah,
trying to get any funding.
Right.
I'm going to start with Jason with this question. When one thinks about, or one starts his own business, the first individuals they share it with is often their family. I want to ask you all, when you decided, when you started your own business, what response did you get from your family? Were they supportive? Were they skeptical? Were they like, nah, don't do that. You better keep your job. So go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. For me, I didn't have that pushback because I didn't have a job. So as long as I was doing the right thing, my mama was happy. But it gets a little difficult when a lot of us is first generation entrepreneurs. So your family, especially your mom and your dad, they always have their their best interests at heart for you. So if you're telling them about an idea and you got a good job, of course they're gonna be like, "What, are you crazy? I wouldn't do that," because they just love you. It's not that they're talking you out of it. They don't see what you can see because you haven't shared your vision properly. But I didn't have that problem, which most people may have. But don't even look at it as an issue because certain people be like, "Hey, I wouldn't leave my 6-figure job or 5-figure job, whatever the case may be, to do that. I wouldn't do that." And sometimes they just be looking out for your well-being. But we be thinking it's like, nah, they just hating or something. But that don't be the case all the time.
Exactly. All right, what else? Okay, go ahead, Lamar.
Go ahead. I just remember, I mean, like you said, my parents were pretty supportive. My mom and dad always kind of been supportive with whatever. When I got into the insurance space, they, a few months in, I think, they got a policy, which is, I'm glad I got in the space because before that, and my parents didn't even have life insurance. A lot of my friends didn't have it. My friends didn't jump on. They were like, "Bro, you were a mental health social worker for 11 years. You did not just become this financial guru overnight." So, I mean, some of my best friends, they all got policies and investment strategies now, but they didn't make a move with me until maybe 3-4 years in. Then they were like, okay, he's serious now. He's talking about it all the time on Facebook. He's posting it. He's helping people all over the country. So, okay, now I'll do it. But, I wasn't discouraged because I understood that, I understood that it takes people to come around. If McDonald's started selling tacos tomorrow, I would not be the guy. Let me see how long we're selling these tacos, or just whatever. People notice that you went from one thing and then you jumped into that entrepreneurial space. Sometimes it may not rock with you initially, but maybe over time. And then there's other people who may believe in you and start and rock with you from day one. Depending on what your business is.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay. And you got it.
Okay, so yeah, like with me, it was difficult because I don't understand why these people keep calling me. I'm sorry. Like that was my son. But for me, it was hard with friends and family because like I first started saying I had done a lot. And it got to the point where they didn't pay me no attention anymore. And it was kind of like, okay, I've always been interested in this, in entrepreneurship. And it would be nice if, friends and family would be more supportive. But to be honest, they're probably like the last people to support you. Your family are like, you ain't never been about this. There's actually I think it's a reel or something like that on social media where it basically goes like your friends and family be the last people to support you, or they'll support you way, way down the line after you then already, gain some, momentum and traction. But once they are receptive, they're definitely, supportive. But I would say, try not to, because sometimes they can try to step on your ambition, and they're like, no, you need to just stay over there, stay at your job, be safe. Because I think a lot of our friend and family minds, they believe that you don't want to work. You just want to, make an excuse about not working. You're an entrepreneur, you basically don't want to work. But we entrepreneurs know we do so much more work than the average employee. So, when it comes down to friends and family, we love them, but I would never suggest to go to your friends and family first. A lot of times that's your first, like with network marketing, that's your first couple of people on your list. They'll say, okay, pull out your paper and write down the first 10 people to come to your head. And those are the first 10 people you talk to. And then those are the first 10 people that tell you no. And it's like, okay, like, okay, but that's just, that's how it goes. But you gotta play the law, the law of averages, and just keep going with it, and don't let it discourage you when, your immediate people don't come out and, cheer for you.
In your family, you have a brother who's also a fashion designer. I don't know if you still do it or not, but he was a fashion designer. So did you collaborate with him? Is that where you got your idea, or did he get his idea from you, or is it something that you must do on your own?
Is that me?
Yeah, yeah. Your brother Miguel is a fashion designer. He did some fashion work as well.
Oh yeah.
I
Okay.
see. I see.
You
Both
took
got
me
that.
back like you really took me back like 20 years.
Okay.
Um,
I don't know if he's still doing it now. So
no, he actually hosted a fashion show. This was a long time ago, probably it seemed like about 20 years ago at Christina Cultural Arts Center.
right.
He was able to put together a really nice fashion show with some of the local designers. I don't, he wasn't a designer. He was more like,
Oh, okay. I thought he designed. Okay, I got you.
yeah, he was the organizer of the show, which is great because I actually been thinking about doing this myself. It came from a fashion show for the We Got Next fashion show productions, where I showcased a few of my designs, which was a really great idea. But no, not exactly. We hadn't collaborated on any, fashion designs.
Okay, got you. Okay, so Lamar and Jason, I guess you both want to speak on this. Lamar, you touched on it earlier about life insurance. Well, I see it all too often where someone passes away, and then the family member has a bucket or crate or whatever you want to call it, a container. They have a container, then they're going around asking for donations to pay for the funeral expenses. So talk about the significance. Both of you can talk about the significance of having life insurance, and what are the different type of plans?
Okay, significance of it is, this is gonna sound crazy, but you're gonna die one day. Like it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Like that's just the reality. It's been reality since the beginning of mankind. So prepare for it, and honestly, coming up with the cost of funerals and things like that is a lot. That's what the insurance company for. It's a contract that says, hey, you pay a little bit, we'll guarantee we'll pay all of it. That's the lump sum. That's but there's different types. Like you said, there's term life, which is life insurance that will just cover you for a certain term, like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. You may say, hey, I'm on a business chase. I only need 10 years of life insurance coverage. After that, I'm gonna be self-employed, or self-insured. I'm gonna have enough money saved up, enough reserve, and create a trust, whatever your situation is. Then there's whole life. This says, hey, I'm gonna have a certain amount of money for the duration of my life. That's gonna make sure that my wife, my children, whoever your beneficiary is gonna get some bread when I pass away. And this honestly hasn't, unfortunately, generations ago, insurance brokers like me would go to affluent neighborhoods and knock on doors and educate the neighbors about all these cool things. As we know, that does not happen in this day and time. As you also know, certain neighborhoods, no one's coming there to educate the people. So it's not a lot of, people of color in this space, which is, great that I'm fortunate to be in this space and just educate people. But then there's index universal life. That's when you want to grow money, and I mean grow it fast, grow money and have access to it tax-free. It's one of the only vehicles that allows you to put money in, gets a big death benefit, and your money is growing in compounding interest year after year after year, and you don't have to pay interest on any of that money. You can access it and become, create an infinite banking structure, become your own banker, which is a really cool thing. You can have a tax-free retirement. So let's say you're putting a certain amount in for the next 10, 20 years, and then say, hey, I want to create a tax-free retirement where you'd be able to take out 10, 20, 30, even 100,000 or more every year tax-free just from having the rightly structured life insurance contract. So, I mean, so many other, plays that you can do with that. There's participating whole life, where, you get to, the market works for you and you get to take advantage of certain tax loops, like 7702A that says, hey, anytime you take money out of a life insurance policy in the form of a loan, you don't have to pay taxes on this. Why the wealthy of America love this. So I love to educate more families on this. And last thing I like to do is have people start small. Start when they're babies. I mean, this money will grow through an IUL. It'll pay for all the kids' life, all the big monumental moments. It'll be there to pay for college, first, down payment on a home, a wedding, retirement, the children that come after. So many powerful, legacy and creation of generational wealth building that can happen with life insurance. So I think everybody should have a policy, a big policy, small policy, have one. So you don't have to do those GoFundMe accounts and
Right.
pass the bucket around in the collection plate in the church. GoFundMe was meant for entrepreneurs to have an idea and say, go to fund me, not to become the funeral planning for the person who didn't plan for the inevitable. So that's why, life insurance is super important. And then to be on the other side, like to be in the business, it's a very lucrative business. It is a very lucrative business, and it's a very noble profession because you are legit helping people in an area that is very dark, very gray, very ambiguous, like my personal finances. Like, how many of us need somebody in their corner to steer them the right way to make sure their personal finances are going to outlive them, begin to, be able to use later on in life, be able to liquid, rate of return, like you said, we're needed, and more of us are needed, and it can be a very, very lucrative field as well for anybody who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur. This is definitely a lane that, as long as there are people, there will be a need for this. So it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's the beautiful part about it.
Exactly, exactly. So Jason, you deal with life insurance as well?
Yeah, a little bit, but we mainly property and casualty. But he said it, he said enough. Um, Life insurance is building legacy. We all need it. You should have a policy on yourself because it gives you the ability to, leave something. And these policies nowadays, you don't have to die to use it. They have living benefits. So, they have critical injury, chronic injury, terminal illness, or, disability. Like if you was to catch a stroke, you can get from your death benefit. So these new policies today, they're not like the old policies where you have to die to use it. You get sick. You may got a stroke. You may got heart disease. And something may happen, and then you go get some of your death benefit. You be like, wow, it's a benefit. So it's a great, great, great thing that we all should have. That life insurance been out there before the tax code. It's a necessary, thing like homeowners insurance or like a home. Back in the days, our grandparents and all of them used to have that. That was like a bill in the house, like necessary bill. They knew something that we ain't know, but they had small policies, but they had them, and we gotta, reward them for that.
So let me ask you, so with life insurance, either one of you can answer this question. Does it cover burial and funeral expenses, or how does that work?
They have specific. I spoke to a gentleman the other day. His company, they specifically make arrangements for funeral homes, and transfer it over. But specifically, when you got a life death benefit, you just, if you got a life insurance policy, you'll let the funeral home know, and then they'll work, to get the check out to them. But it's however you design it, as I would see. So you may say, hey, they go over needs analysis, half the time, and figure out, what do you want? Hey, I want to pay off my house. I want to pay off this. I want to pay off that. And they come up with a death benefit amount. And then in that, it goes, any funeral arrangements can be used for that, things of that nature, because it's going to go to the family.
Absolutely. So it could pay off the funeral and the final expenses, but it could be a term for 30 years to say, hey, if I pass away, let it be enough to pay off my whole house. So it can, pay off so many other things too. Or you may have two children and say, hey, I want to have a policy of 120,000, 20 for the funeral, 100,000 to give both my children 50,000, just to bless them in whatever part of life that they're in, So yeah, it can be structured so many ways. The uses can go far beyond just funeral and final expenses. Like Jason said, there's living benefits as well. You say, hey, something happens, life happens, I need some money. I can go right go get it right from my policy. From either, if I'm sick, I can get it from the death benefit. If I'm have a correctly structured IUL or index universal life or par whole life, I can just pull out money from the policy, and not have to blink an eye about it. Don't need a credit score for it. Don't need to tell anybody what I need it for. Just go online, request it, and get it direct deposit to your account 2 days later. So it's amazing what it can do.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, one more question about insurance, and that comes to home insurance. Well, if come to find out is that a lot of home insurance policies don't cover floods. Why is that?
Yeah, so that's a flood. It's been going, flood because you insurance companies can't insure catastrophes. So usually a flood is a national disaster. So there's a national program that the government just keeps kicking down the road. And I was just in Washington, 2 months ago with the lobbyists talking about the flood program as well. But it's a separate policy altogether. And now they have private insurers, because flood policies, if you're in a flood zone, man, it can be quite expensive. And we never, they give out, they say, hey, you're not gonna get a flood every 100 years. So so they got those records, but even we know that's not even right, because nobody can predict the weather nowadays. It's crazy out here. Houston getting snow, it's snowing in Houston. It's just, it's crazy. Things that would never happens today. So flood is separate because that's something that's catastrophic that can't really be measured. Insurance, they tend to, if it can't be measured, they don't insure it. It has that some type of, okay, if this was to happen, it'll wipe out 100 homes, but thousands are going to be good. If they can measure it, then they can put something together. But when with flood and all of that, it's really difficult. But there's a lot of private insurance getting in that space now, which is driving the cost down, because they know how to properly rate that, find a proper rate for it. But it's always going to be separate. So homeowners usually think, that's why you always got to, you got to tell people, even in the homeowner application, if you see it, there's a checkbox. This is not a homeowner policy. Not a flood. Flood is excluded from this homeowner policy, and you sign off on that. So they let you know, that your agents will let you know as well. But it's always going to be separate right now until companies start to package it in. And there are companies that do package it in right now, but it's a separate policy altogether.
Got you. As entrepreneurs, having your own business, there are challenges. So I want to start off with Michi, Omar, and Jason. As an entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges that you have faced?
Well, losses, thinking I'm gonna, make more than I, made, or I'll put out a certain amount of money thinking I was going to get it back, and I didn't. And that's probably one of the things that is, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, especially with marketing, because marketing can get very expensive, especially like if you run like Facebook ads or Google ads, or if you've ever done anything like that, where you promote your website or a particular product or service. It can get very, very costly when you're trying to find your audience. There's some keys to, say, Facebook advertising that requires investment, and sometimes you don't recuperate that money back from advertising. And but that's just how it goes. You're doing something from a position of a professional business owner, so you kind of got to be the boss, and sometimes you take losses. But that's just how it goes. You win some, you lose some, but the law of averages will eventually even out for you or anyone who's trying to get into the space. And it's just to be expected. Yeah.
Lamar?
The challenges. burnout, staying consistent, like that can be, something that, always putting your best foot out there. That can be very, very challenging. Losses can be very challenging. Yes, I know what it's like to to advertise and put out ads and nothing comes back. That sucks. But it can be a blessing in disguise because you realize, how can I get better? How can I improve? And so, working your business and trying to make money is one thing, but it's really about the mindset. So the biggest challenge is going to be the mindset. It's going to tell you quit a gazillion times. You're going to have that little thought that says, you know, try something else. Like stick to what you're doing, get better. Don't be scared to improve. Um, I mean, man, if you want to get real transparent, I mean, I remember my marketing was being done by someone else for a while when I first started. I didn't know anything about it, marketing. They ended up getting a big job that took their time away, and I didn't know how to fish. I didn't know how to market, and so my business tanked. Like it just started to nosedive. It got to a point where losses, lost my home, lost my car, then wifey lost her job. I mean, we were at the bottom of the bottom. Like, to be honest, like, this is where I say mindset is to the point that I was at like a blood plasma place, hoping to get enough money to fill up my car and try to do Uber enough to try to get some life insurance leads so I can find some clients to try to help people. I mean, it was bad. I'm like needle on one hand and thinking grow rich in the other hand. I was feeding my mindset the whole time to fight that beast that was like, you failure, you lost everything, you know what I mean? Like that voice was loud, and I had to like keep something, all these books we have, so many books that to keep my mindset going, because you will have losses. 2018 was a horrible year. Then 2019 became my first six-figure year in this space, and as an independent. So then things just got better. So I always look at my life now and say, what would happen if I would have gave up when I had tremendous losses, $100 losses, $1,000 losses, and so loss can be something that can wipe you out. And keeping your business funded and while maintaining your own personal bills and keeping that funded in the beginning can be very, very challenging too. And then if you have a family, work-life balance, it's a big one. So so
Yes.
a lot of challenges that can happen there because man, your business can become your new baby. You know what I mean? You have to balance it out with other responsibilities as well. So it's challenging. It's challenging. Nothing perfect. I always say I'm forever a student in FIO University. That's figure it out university. Like you just gotta figure it out. Like, so always be a student, always just keep pushing because you will have some challenges. It's hard. It's challenging.
Yeah, so challenges in business, just general, it could be market conditions that can slow up, opportunities or increase it, and lack of capacity, lack of capital, in businesses not being, not calculating properly and, putting enough money aside for, for them rainy days. So you're gonna all of that, in business, everybody incurs it, wrong marketing team, wrong that. That's just a part of business, that's just a part of it. You feel what I'm saying? We all go through that, but just stay in the course. Challenges are going to come. Life is a challenge. Just navigate through it. So challenges going to exist, but you just don't let it get to you. Don't let it get the best of you. So there's a lot of challenges. Just getting up is a challenge. Getting to the office is a challenge. We fight through that every day. So challenges do exist, but just recognize them and mitigate them. And continue to mitigate against those challenges when they do come.
I want to look at the word presentation, because all three of you are entrepreneurs. You have your own business. When I say presentation, it takes a little bit of public speaking. You're going out and you're making presentations to those, to try to bring those into your business. You're out there in the community or you're in your office, you're dealing with customers. Customer service is very, very significant. And sometimes, so we're all African Americans, Black Americans, whatever terms you want to use. There are times when I hear others say, and I personally observe, that sometimes we don't have the best customer service skills. We lack professionalism. So if anyone wants to talk about the significance of when you bring your presentation, be professional, to dress professional, to be courteous. Because that says a lot, because if someone comes to you, your business, it feels though that you're not being professional, or if you don't have this, you don't have that. We as a people, we quick to talk. We quick to say, I ain't coming back. And then not only are we not coming back, we tell others, don't go over there. they ain't no good. So, we good for that. So, talk about the significance of anyone. If all three you want to address this as being professional, having a great presentation, smile, all that good stuff. Whoever wants to go can go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, presentation is very important. Politeness, culture, but you got to think about it. Most of us is first generation entrepreneurs, so we get thrown in the fire. And if you don't take classes, you may not know how to talk. You may not know how to present. Your posture could be disrespectful to people. So there's certain things we have not been taught. So we must have patience when it comes to us. When it comes to us, we got to have a little more patience, because I know I was explaining, I said, I got bad products from Target a few times, and I never told you to stop going there. I just took my product back and exchanged it for another one. Didn't complain about the commute there. Didn't complain about none of that. Was just happy they exchanged it. But when it comes, as you just said, brother, when it comes to us, I'm like, no, don't go back there. They terrible. You know what I mean? That's a problem in our community. What we got to do is have patience. And we made those of us that experience bad customer service, pull them to the side or write a letter to them. You know what I mean? You ain't got to publicly do it. You could probably teach them in that. I say, next time, when I come in, you got to be more inviting. And these are a few things that you can do to be more inviting. They may take that. You understand what I'm saying? So I always say with us, being that most of us is first generation entrepreneurs and we haven't been taught culture, we haven't been taught refinement, then we must have patience. But presentation is the key. Like you said, you want to make sure that you dress properly, properly groomed. Those are things that we think we should know, but unfortunately we have not been taught these things, so we don't know it. So it's very important in our culture, to be able to be presentable, to be honest. You're dealing with, like, in the financial field, you're dealing with people's personal information. Like, I got thousands of people, credit cards, social security numbers, date of births. You got to have ethical individuals around you and people that you constantly vet out, because they're getting people personal information. So presentation is key, but we have to be taught presentation. We have to be taught culture. We got to be taught refinement, because many of us, unfortunately, have not been taught that in business.
Right. I agree with you. It was kind of difficult for me because I was never a great speaker. But I realized in order for me to get my business and my brand out there, I had to start to talk to people. And, I just kind of threw myself into the lion's den, to be honest. I was just, I would just go from business to business to business, just talking to people, and I would practice a script that I would write up, and then I would practice, at home, or I would practice in my car, whatever, the stuff that I wanted to, say when I approach a business owner or, a new business. And, after a while, it was like, it started just to take over, and I could meet somebody new. I knew what to say. I didn't have to think about it. So knowing what you're going to say ahead of time before you get out there, when you're promoting your business, or when you have you're talking to a customer. Remember, you're entrepreneur, so you have to wear all these different hats. So sometimes, me personally, I have children, so I have to take off the mommy hat and put on the business owner hat and, make sure that, I'm addressing customers and people with questions and concerns in the proper manner. I wasn't taught that at all. I was, more like trial and error. I messed up a few times, I've said some very heated things at times, and I've had to apologize and humble myself. And all those things are learning experience, and had to get on the learning curve because I wanted to continue on, and I didn't want to create a bad reputation for myself. So, just sticking with it, practice what you're going to say to somebody. If look at your competition, go to their Q&A page, see what read reviews, and think about maybe how you would approach that situation if you were in it as towards your business. So always try to be prepared, even though sometimes you're not always prepared, but just try your best to present yourself in a proper manner.
Yes, customer service is everything. Like, you want it to be a good experience. Like, your reputation will, precede you, so again, anything from body language, your tone of voice, your presentation, if you have, if this is a client, if this was with a client right now, I'll be in a shirt, suit, tie, something else, or a polo with my, with the logo, something that represents your brand. You want it to look, classy, professional. Last thing we want is ghetto fabulous presentation. We don't want ghetto fabulous. Even when it comes to tone, speech, attitude, everything. You want professional. You want kind. You want people to leave, from doing business with you or your store, your business, feeling good. You want them to feel like if someone recommended them to you, you'll give them a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on Yelp. So you want people to come back. You gotta make sure your business is a great experience. Studies on this stuff, like what brings people back is how you make them feel. Somebody say, here's a t-shirt, here you go. People like, man, you gotta wear this, you look good in this is nice. Oh, like that enthusiasm, all that kind of stuff, all that goes a long way. You want your client to be thinking about you 10 minutes after they're done with you, and then the next day after they're done with you. You want them to have this somewhere in their brain that working with you is a good experience, and let me recommend other people to you. So you got to have some great customer service.
One of the things that I admire so much about entrepreneurs is they overcome fear. For example, there are those of us who have in mind, as Jason was talking about earlier, have a better idea of starting a business. However, we come up with excuses in terms of not wanting to start that business. I got a 9-to-5 year. I got full coverage 401k plan. I got medical insurance. I got a check that I know we're going to pay every 2 weeks. And if I start my own business, I don't know if I'm going to take a loss. I don't know if I'm going to get my money back. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. That's the fear that's installed in us in terms of not starting our own business. So what do you say to those who are contemplating starting their own business or have a fear of starting a business because they are afraid? We are afraid to fail. Anybody? I'll be right back. I'm gonna get my charges. Y'all can go ahead and talk. I'll be right back.
Okay, I mean, that's Young Jeezy said it best. Scare money don't make no money. Like, you got to be willing to invest in yourself. You have to be, if you want people to pay you, you got to be willing to pay into you. You got to invest in yourself. So, a lot of people, like, you can cut corners and try to save costs when you can, but you can't be El Cheapo when it comes to certain things. You have to, overcome that fear. Put faith over fear. You got to be the first person to have faith in you and your idea that God is giving you creativity to do. You got to have faith. And so if you have faith, you're gonna, faith without works is dead, is what the Bible says. So you got to work. Whatever you believe in, you got to put in the work for it. And then, over time, enthusiastic work gets contagious. Word of mouth gets contagious. So, I mean, just overcome that fear. And I'll say, do it scared. Start your business afraid. Just start. Jump off the porch, go forward, jump off the airplane, so to speak, not literally, but just whatever that fear is, start, jump and take that leap, because that's the that's the you'll be paralyzed. They call it, what is it, paralysis of analysis, when you overthink and and then years go by, you just never got started. At least start, and then you'll begin. So, and like anything, my daughter's about to start driving. She's a little scared to start, but once, with repetition, it gets easier. So once you, put faith over fear and actually start, and then keep starting and do it, keep doing it again, just be consistent with it, you'll get better and easier, with it. So I just want to encourage you, yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Actually, it's a what is it, the book of, it's another book called, what is it, The Power of No. Like, get as many no's and get as many losses as you can. Fail forward, fail often, so you can get better quicker and faster. Like, don't, like, you are going to fail, you're going to royally screw up. Like, anything that can go wrong may go wrong, and just be ready to adjust. So go out there and do it scared. Just do it scared, do it that way.
Right. Well, if a part to me, if I was if someone was talking to me about becoming a, entrepreneur, or their own, starting their own business, and they were scared and they were like having a bunch of excuses and this and that, and I've been very blunt with people before, and I'll just say, not everybody is cut out to be a boss. You gotta understand, there are employees, and then there are business owners. You have to decide what it is that you want to be. Earlier in the show, one of the gentlemen was talking about how you use your job to leverage, your own business. And that's fine, because you've already taken the step. But those people who are stuck on the porch, who won't take the leap, it might not be for them. It might not. They might just feel like, hey, I see somebody else doing something, I want to do it, but I'm too scared. So if that's the case, then hey, that should, honestly, I'm always like, look, if you're not the boss type, then you might not want to enter the arena. You have to understand it takes a certain type of mindset, a certain type of drive, a certain type of passion to step out on faith like that. Sometimes you can bring people off the porch, but those people, man, they're very resistant at times. So it's better, that person makes that step on their own, and understand that it's going to take a lot of persistence and consistency, and staying with it in order to succeed as an entrepreneur. So know where you're going to be. Are you going to be a boss, or are you just going to, you're just going to just keep playing and poking at it?
Jason Rodriguez.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. So, they said a lot. And I was just thinking, as an entrepreneur, and if somebody that's working, that you alluded to, got a 401k, got all of that. It depends your level of dissatisfaction, or as well as like how bad you want to leave corporate. Because if you look at it, there's really no security in that as well. You just not, as a worker, you don't have the intricate knowledge of what their back office look like, if they lost that big grant, so you don't go to sleep with that on your mind, like, oh, they lost a big grant, I might get fired. You don't know it until you get the slip. But when you're an entrepreneur, wow, if I don't get this sale, I may not have a home, so you ground floor with the opportunity. But we feel that we got a job and it's more secure. Yeah, it's more secure because you're not privy to what's going on in the back office. They're not telling you that, hey, we just lost in the market $1 billion. You're not hearing that. You feel what I'm saying? So if you was to know everything that goes on, you'd be like, I got to get me a business. I can't continue to live like this. You understand what I'm saying? But they're not privy to those conversations. So a lot of people don't know. So I say, your level of dissatisfaction. And like she said, it's not for everybody. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. You got to have strong will. You got to have persistence. You got to have determination, and you got to have the will not to quit, because, as an entrepreneur, like, I'll be wanting to quit, not every day, but every other day. You know what I'm saying? I take a day off of quitting, you know what I mean? But it gets tough, it gets tough. So it's just your level, you know, what you're passionate about. And if there's something that you really do, it takes, you know, I wouldn't just say, hey, quit your job and, you know, don't have enough money stacked. You didn't plan for anything. You didn't do it properly. I would never give you that advice. And a lot of people would give that advice. You got a job, they like, they job sharing, whatever they, you know, and it's not a good thing. So if you got a job and you want to do something for yourself, do it on the hours. First, do it on the hours that you're not working. Do it on the weekends, sacrifice some time. And then when your clientele base makes as much as you're making at the job, or a quarter of that, and you see the difference. Well, I'm only putting 20 hours a week, and I'm making 3/4 of what I make at my job. So that if I do that other 20 hours, I know I can cover what I'm making at my job, because I'm 90% there right now doing it part-time. And that's sometimes it's no-brainers, you know, and medical and 401ks, you can get that, you know, on the market from brothers like Lamar. You know, they got those type of plans. So, you know, if you want to do for self, it's always out there. But I just said, you know, properly plan and make sure you're taking the right steps.
Absolutely. All three of you have children. I want to start off with Lamar. Have any of you installed in your children, hey, your mommy or your daddy's an entrepreneur? I would like for you to be an entrepreneur as well, or have your children expressed that they want to be an entrepreneur to you, and what was that conversation like? Let's start off with Lamar.
Yeah, you know, I got 3 daughters, 16, 14, and 10. And yeah, I told them, you know, college is optional, you know, unless you want a college, you know, specific career, you know, chemistry, engineering, doctor, lawyer, science, you know, something like that that requires it. Cool. But, you know, if you know, also have a, you know, passion idea that you think would take off, bring it to the table, let's talk about it, let's, you know, run it from start to finish, you know, lay it out. And, you know, instead of investing in paying some professors, I'd rather also invest into, you know, their startup business and, you know, believe in them and things like that. My youngest actually, without necessarily having an entrepreneur conversation per se, I've had a few, but she started a lemonade stand last summer. So she was passionate. I mean, again, you kind of listen to your kid. They had a whole idea. She had it mapped out, you know, how she would be, the colors, everything, you know. And so, you know, we made it happen. And she was averaging like $15 a day out there selling lemonade in front of the house. Made a stand. I mean, I was like, whoa, you
She was
know.
busy,
And
okay?
she was busy making money. And then after this, Dad, wow, let's go to Five Below and blow it, whatever, Dollar Tree or whatever. But yeah, that just watching and getting having some conversation, I think did instill, you know, and then they're like, whoa, if I want money, I can put myself out there, be fearless, and go for it, you know. And so yeah, it definitely the bug has been biting. So hopefully it continues to bite. Yeah.
All right, Nietzsche.
Yes. Well, I have 5 kids. I have 2 older sons, and they're, I can see, how are they? 23 and 21. And they have started a power washing business. And that's definitely born of, you know, the things that they've seen me do growing up. You know, put my clothing in, you know, local stores and things like that. And, you know, I always try to get them to, you know, back in the day, I don't know if they still do that now, but back in the day, we used to collect cans. And I had them, you go around to the neighbor's house and ask, and have them ask the neighbors, hey, can you, you know, save up, you know, however many cans a week, and we'll collect them and take them over to the, you know, the scrap yard and get money for it. And that's kind of how it started. They started, you know, collecting cans. And as they got older, they, you know, started hauling trash and whatever, helping people move, cutting grass. And eventually they was able to come along to some power washing equipment, and they started turbo power cleaning services. So they definitely have that entrepreneurial spirit to go out and, you know, start a business in their own way, their own ideas. They actually do, they help me with my business. They, all 3 of my sons do modeling for me for some of my brands, and anytime I need some photos taken. And just recently, my 14-year-old, he helps me with my brand doing modeling, but he did a raffle where he raffled off a 32-inch flat screen TV, and he made
Saw that on Facebook.
$20. I'm sorry.
I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah, he made $120, raffled off the TV, and he's trying to build a computer. So it went to purchasing his video cards for his new computer that he's buying. But he does videography, and he wants to do videography, as his own thing. He actually started a Fiverr page where he, contracts, does a little contract where he like does video editing for like YouTubers. So he's, he's definitely somebody who sees what his mother does, and as well as his stepfather, because he owns an electrical services business where he, this is what we do here at home. We have our own businesses here, but my children can see the benefit of running your own business and making your own money through your own skills and, your own passions. So my two little ones, they're too small right now, but my daughter, sometimes she's like, "Mom, maybe," but when she's only 7, but I'm sure eventually she'll figure out what it is that she wants to do. But yeah.
Okay, Jason, I know you have a little Jason, I don't know if his name's Jason, but I know you got a little son.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, I got a son and a daughter. My daughter taking nursing, so she's going to help the community out.
Okay.
My son is he's the vice president of Prominence marketing department. It's funny, right? I just say that, it's just a joke, but he goes with me everywhere. I take him to conferences, I take him to meetings, I take him to board meetings, and they love him like in the industry. So when I'm there, they be like, "Hey, is the VP of marketing coming today?" Because they love him. He be making, I'm telling you, and my son, he be getting me, like, he gets me appointments, like he gets me audiences with individuals. It's crazy because he's just outgoing and, speaks to people very respectful. And they be like, "Hey, well, this guy, I like this guy." And then, everywhere I go now, I usually bring him, and if I'm not with him, they don't want to see me, They be like, "All right, where's your son at?" I be like, "He's not here." "Okay, see you later. See you later." I'm like, "No," So yeah. So I'm growing them up, work in the business, work in the business, be part of the brand.
Gotcha. That is awesome. Okay, so as we close out this program, a couple of minutes each. Any inspiring words for those who may be interested in being an entrepreneur? What words of encouragement do you have for he or she? And then what is the contact information for those who are watching if they want to utilize your business? Let's start with Jason.
Yes, sir. So keep going, man. If you got a vision, if you got a business that you want to start it. Don't let that stop you. Don't talk yourself out of it. Plan it, sacrifice some hours, a day to get it done. It's 24 hours in a day. You can get a lot done in that hours. And continue to grow. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's not easy. Nothing worth it is easy. So it's definitely not easy, but it's definitely worth it, and that's what we do. We give an opportunity as well. So if you want to know anything about the insurance space, property and casualty in particular, we franchising, we increasing minority participation. You can catch us online, www.prominentagency.com. Jason Rodriguez, DM me any information you need on, being a resource, helping people. We here for that as well, And I thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to, express our ideas.
Thank you as well. All right, Lamar.
Man, where to begin? Yeah, just reach out. Again, if you ever want to be an entrepreneur, first I'll say go for it. We need more entrepreneurs. If you feel passionate about it, go do it. We need more creative thinkers, people who think outside the box. We need people in different spaces. There's so many niches, and don't listen to like the this is too saturated. That's too saturated. It's enough to go around. It's enough to go around. I don't care if you barber, cut hair, do insurancing, create things. It's enough to go around. Trust me. So don't be afraid to do anything. No idea is a dumb idea, and if it is, play it out anyway. Then adjust and make it smarter. If you are looking for information in the financial services space, life insurance space, then go to dominancefinancial.com. You'll see this logo everywhere on the website. But you can book a consultation. All consultations are free, so you can't say, oh, I need money to speak to you. No, you don't. We don't charge our clients anything. We educate you for free. We do it all for free. We put you in position to financially succeed for free. So, don't let that be a mental obstacle or even any obstacle. To just dominancefinancial.com. You can book with us, or find me on social media or on Instagram, Facebook. So send us a chat, DM, anything, and we'll be more than happy to help you out.
Hey, Miss Ali, close us out.
Yes, yes. So I would just say, if you're interested in getting involved with it, just to stay consistent. Right now, the internet is a powerful tool, and it's so much easier now because it's free. It's free to post, it's free to share, it's free. You can get on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. All these platforms are free. You don't have to pay for them. So your platform is there. So just follow your heart, follow your dreams. Don't just talk about it, be about it. I know that's something that I've had to tell people that I know. Stop talking and start working, start doing. So, put your money where you in your mouth and you're into action. So just stay consistent and take the leap. If you're looking for work, or if you're looking for any sort of fashions, or you want to get a t-shirt made, or if you have a brand idea, you want to bring it to life, you can message me on my website, which is nkstyles.net. Again, that's nkstyles.net. Or you can visit my Facebook page, and that's nkstyles@facebook.com.
All right, let me thank everybody for coming out and being a guest, taking your time. We got to do this again. This is a very educational, informative discussion. I look forward to continue to communicate with you all. For those who are watching, please subscribe, and all that other good stuff. In the meantime, have a blessed and safe week. Lamar, it's good seeing you again.
And likewise, Omar.
Nietzsche, I know I see you again.
Absolutely.
Take care. God bless. Have a safe week.
God bless you, man. God bless you all. Have a good one.
All right, thank you.